Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Kind of an amazing story to bring you. Newly released surveillance from the Parkland, Florida shooting has just been released. It shows former Deputy Scott Peterson, the person in charge of protecting the building, arriving outside at the moment that Nikolas Cruz was conducting his rampage. Peterson then stood around for several minutes as the shooting occurred and did nothing. 17 died. Also, documents just obtained by Judicial Watch show how egregious this failure was, Peterson's failure. Training manuals from the Broward County Sheriff's Office explicitly instruct the first officers on the scene to confront the shooter. Of course, that didn't happen, just the opposite. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and he joins us tonight. Tom, great to see you.
Hey, thanks.
So there was some confusion when we first learned that this deputy in charge of protecting the students there was some speculation that perhaps he'd been told not to, or that the department required him to wait for backup. Not true.
No, the manual says he may go in, and the training materials that we obtained under the Florida Sunshine Law, the classes and the materials show you're instructed to try to stop the shooter as soon as you're able, whether you're one deputy, two deputies showing up, 3 or 4. And the language is pretty striking. They say every time you hear a shot, you can presume another person is being killed. And so the instructions are to try to confront the shooter as quickly as possible, because the analysis was, after Columbine, as soon as the shooter is confronted by an individual who's armed, whether it be a police officer, a school security officer, or a civilian who's carrying a concealed weapon, the shooter engages, shoots back and forth, or commits suicide. Either way, the shooting of innocent stops. And it's upsetting to read these documents knowing what actually happened that day, and it shows a failure by Broward County Sheriff's Department, either the properly trained officers, or in the case of maybe the current officer who had to resign in disgrace. Obviously, he ignored the training, if indeed he followed it.
So this wasn't some hidden thing. This wasn't esoteric. It was in the training manual. And I think that's relevant because Sheriff Israel, in the days after the shooting, went to the CNN gun control rally and sat on the stage and blamed armed citizens, blamed the middle of the country, basically, for what happened, and never mentioned the failures of his deputy. But he must have known that this was the protocol. Wouldn't he have known that?
That's right. And, other deputies arrived, and they didn't go into the building as quickly as they should have either. And they talk about, if you have 4 deputies go in, you're supposed to form up in a quad, they call it, a diamond formation, and go in and confront the shooter. It's,
so there were, just to be clear, I think there were 4 deputies outside armed during the shooting,
and
correct?
Who did not immediately enter the building. Peterson was there, 3 others showed up, and it took them a bit to enter the building. And Peterson should have been there immediately. He could have gone in by himself. Another deputy arrives. They could have gone in together. They recommend if you go in together, there's a technique for approaching a shooter if you're just a 2-man team. What's frustrating about this, you see this material and you recognize what the failure was in Parkland that led to the needless deaths.
Yes. And
we suffered through these ridiculous demonstrations yesterday. They weren't ridiculous. I mean, kids, fear for their safety. They came out and said what they thought. But it has nothing to do with what the situation in Parkland was, which was a failure of law enforcement to follow their own protocols to protect innocent civilians. And on top of that, we now know about the FBI failing to follow up on tips.
So the authorities failed to protect us. They lied about it and blamed us.
That's right. And now the talk is, with the politicians, we're going to take away guns. And it has nothing to do with protecting kids in schools.
So rather than accept blame, they turn it outward on the population.
They're incredible documents. And frankly, your viewers should go look at them. They're going to be pretty darn upset when they see what the training was, because they're going to see the training as being extremely informative. And my gosh, if it had been followed, lives would have been saved.
Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.